One of CBC's top journalists, Rosemary Barton, defamed me during her coverage of the federal election debate. Now, the state broadcasters have quietly backpedaled some of the misinformation she spread when doing so, but she has yet to apologize or to even come out and retract her statements about me by name. Unfortunately, the CBC has made me the part of the story. I'm going to walk you through everything I went through. But before I do, I'm going to ask if you appreciate my journalism to grab another device or open up another tab and go to cbclies.com right now. Respectfully join the email campaign that we've set up for you to demand that Ms. Barton take back her claims and publicly apologize for what she did.
These were right-wing people that publish their own agenda and websites who confronted journalists.
Drea Humphrey with Rebel News, and I've been with Rebel News for almost 5 years now. And if you would have told me 6 years ago that the chief political correspondent for CBC, Rosemary Barton, would be defaming me on national television, I wouldn't have believed you. And not because I was a blind believer of all things mainstream media. After all, I consumed alternative media, including Rebel News, before becoming a rebel, but because surely, with her awards, the clout, and the billions of tax dollars the CBC takes from us, Miss Barton must have a shred of journalistic integrity, right? Well, she doesn't. At least not with me. Not with Rebel News. In fact, she speaks about us as though we are not journalists, which by the very definition I'm sure she's aware we are, or as though we aren't even human. I'm going to walk you through her attacks on my work and character, and you'll see by the end of this report that it's actually her credibility that's on the line, not mine. Many of you know that following the French election debate, I scrummed NDP leader Jagmeet Singh about a very important matter, one that Barton and the army of CBC journalists have grossly underreported.
Hello, Mr. Singh. Drea Humphrey with Rebel News. Your party takes great pride in standing against hate such as white supremacy, Islamophobia, and online...
Sorry, I didn't get your outlet.
Drea Humphrey with Rebel News.
Okay.
Your party...
You know where I'm going to go with this, all right?
Can I speak?
Yeah, you can. I'm just going to say you know where I'm going to go with it, though.
I asked him during the Easter season about the rise and ongoing acts of hate against Christian places of worship since sensational claims that the remains of Indigenous children had been discovered in unmarked graves swept the nation in 2021.
These claims have been disproven by bands that excavated and remain unproven by those that have not. Will you condemn the rise in acts of hate against Christians today and explain what your party will do moving forward to keep Christians safe from hate in Canada?
Again, thank you, but I'm not going to respond to an organization that promotes misinformation and disinformation like Rebel News, so no, I'm not going to respond to your question.
Shame. Pompous Singh, who gaslights the public into thinking he stands against hate, shunned me. Scratch that, he shunned Canadians, especially the 53% of which who are Christians, and he used the lie that we spread misinformation as a cowardly excuse to do so. Can you imagine for just 1 second if that was a question about burning mosques across the country? He probably would have answered, but even if he didn't, imagine the outrage from the media. Yet not a single journalist that wasn't independent was outraged. Instead, I kid you not, they were actually heckling me as I was asking the question. You couldn't hear it, I guess, on the mics. They were swearing for me to shut the F up, and so on. Of course, it was only an independent with True North that had something to say about that publicly.
When they were heckling her, I thought they were heckling Jagmeet Singh because I believe that when a politician refuses to answer questions from the media or the public, that they have every right to be heckled. But unfortunately, they were actually heckling independent media. I think that speaks to and underscores why people have so much distrust of the mainstream media and why it's so important that independent media has a chance to be here.
But Jagmeet Singh and his Christophobic allies were not the only disgrace that evening. Miss Rosemary Barton, likely fuming with rage because the rebels were accredited to bust through her tax-paid-for echo chamber and pose questions that not only held our leaders to account, as witnessed by many still condemning Singh's callous response to my question or lack thereof, but also held state media journalists like her to account by exposing to those they've been keeping in the dark about church attacks and false unmarked grave claims that this whole time there's been another side to the story. Perhaps that's why Miss Barton sought quick to lie about me in order to salvage herself, or maybe it wasn't a lie. Maybe she just truly doesn't know what the heck she's talking or reporting about. Either way, here's what she said about me, the elephant in the room.
I think we have to sort of address the elephant in the room. How are these people chosen to answer these questions? And I don't know if either one of you have an answer for that, but I think there will be people at home saying, some of these seem like odd questions. Some of them aren't getting answered. How come we've heard so often from this one particular outlet? Any idea what's going on there?
There's three right-wing, very right-wing media, we can call them media, websites that are present in there. They get in line to ask a question like anybody else. Their accreditation has been approved by the Commission of Debates, and so they get the right to stand in line and ask a question that they choose to ask. In this case, you saw Mr. Singh, and this has been his position for some time, to refuse to answer questions. Rebel News in particular traffics in misinformation, facts, lack of facts, and as you heard in that question, which was woven with some truth and some things that weren't true. Yes, there have been burnings of Christian Catholic churches. Yes, there have been remains of Indigenous children found in various places around the country, which she misrepresented. We'll see if Mr. Poilievre gets any questions from right-wing organizations. I would suspect no.
But that's not true now, is it? Sheila Gunn Reid with Rebel News did pose Poilievre a tough question, and unlike cowardly Singh, he answered. As for what Barton said about me, that's misinformation, Rosie. And she knew so at the debate. How do I know? Well, because just like I respectfully posed my questions to Mr. Singh, I respectfully went up to Rosie the following day to ask why she called me a liar when I'm not and didn't even reach out to me first. I offered my hand to shake to her, and she weirdly said that she only shakes with the other hand. And I simply reminded her that she accused me of spreading misinformation about unmarked graves. She actually denied doing such, even though you just heard her say it plain as day. Instead, she claimed she said that I just couldn't have known whether or not there were bodies there. But that makes no sense, even if she had said it, because I specifically said that the bands that have excavated have disproven the claims, and the ones that haven't excavated, well, those claims are still unproven. But after great pushback from those who know better about the false unmarked grave claims, no thanks to the CBC whispered out this measly retraction, if you can call it that. It says, on April 16th, during a live broadcast following the French debate, CBC's chief political correspondent Rosemary Barton said, yes, there have been remains of Indigenous children found in various places across the country. As CBC News has reported on multiple occasions, what several Indigenous communities across Canada have discovered on the sites of some former residential schools are potential burial sites or unmarked graves, aka they don't know what it is. But do you think Rosie has apologized for what she said about me on national television? No. And that's why we've set up the easy way for you to respectfully demand that she does at our website called cbclies.com. But look at the quality of journalists who came to Rosemary's defense, even after the CBC quietly acknowledged that it was Rosie, not me, spreading misinformation about residential schools. It's none other than Rachel Gilmore, of course, who says, but the quote, CBC issued, it's correct. And then she proceeds to not know what she's talking about, saying that in Saskatchewan, they found a child's jawbone, and also mentions a finding in Edmonton that she doesn't specify. Yet, just like with Miss Rosie Barton, Gilmore hasn't followed the facts here. I assume she read this National Observer article, which made the same claims as her tweet when it was fact-checking me and said my question is false. Embarrassingly enough, their journalist Emily Barron-Cadloff, who also didn't reach out to me first, still didn't even know that you can't find bodies underground with ground-penetrating radar alone. It just finds targets of interest, anomalies, anything from tree roots to human remains. It could be, as evidence suggests in Kamloops, an old septic plot. But it appears that Kadloff has not yet watched my documentary from a few years back, which you can watch for free at kamloosdocumentary.com. It debunks all of this. And she tried so hard with her fact-checking article that she ended up having to do a retraction that's almost as long as the article itself, but yet still says, my question was false. Instead of the bigger story pointing out how several bands that said they found unmarked graves by GPR and then excavated learned that those claims were false, she, like Gilmore's tweet, deflect and discuss a fragment of a child's jawbone that was reportedly found at a Saskatchewan site. But just like with Barton, they are not following the facts. If Kadloff had and Gilmore had, they would know that the Saskatchewan Coroner's Office has confirmed that not only is this ancestry of the fragment unknown, it's also a historical find. In other words, it doesn't pertain to part of any active forensic or criminal investigation, aka a pending investigation into potential unmarked graves. Now, obviously, I can't be expected to fit explanations like that into the premise of my question and thus should not be accused of having false questions. I can't even explain all of the reasons why Gilmore is off here, so instead I'll put that article from Michelle Sterling in the description box below for this article. But the point here, if we discuss the real elephant in the room, is that these journalists, Barton, Gilmore, Kadloff, they're working overtime to try to discredit me for simply shedding light on attacks against Christians in the country. And do you think they're using their media platforms to do the same? No. And it's like they want there to be hundreds of missing, killed, murdered Indigenous children found in unmarked graves. Why are they not celebrating that so far has not been true? Yet I'm the one who's the bigot, right? It's a good thing that to date, no bodies have been found. It's a great thing. It's the first step for those communities to begin healing after such a painful misunderstanding. It's literally the first step of truth and reconciliation. These journalists are clinging on to debunked claims like it's some new form of Munchausen syndrome. And the truth is that following the Kamloops band's false claims to have discovered 215 children's remains, some as young as 3 years old, with GPR, which again is simply not possible without excavation, the feds immediately promised to give that band millions of our tax dollars to address the claim. Next thing you know, you had other bands grabbing themselves GPR tools and saying, hey, we found graves. Some of them were just talking about graveyards they already knew they had. Until the government was so indebted by over 100 First Nations who had raised their hands with those claims, but most of which have never excavated, that the Liberal government has actually halted the primary funding for these initiatives to keep looking into the claims. The Liberals! I wish I could say that Barton's false and out-of-context claims about me and my very important question about the safety of Christians in Canada was the only misinformation she spread involving me at the debate, but it was not. Her and David Cochrane were so angry by our mere presence at the debate. They pressured the commission often in interviews for accrediting us lawfully. And when they canceled the entire scrum, Barton and Cochrane were quick to make it look like it was Rebel News' fault.
This is where the national Canadian election debate has ended up.
Like we had started some sort of incident. They went as far as to shield a homosexual slur-defending Hill Times journalist named Stu Benson, who was actually the person who started an incident when spreading misinformation about Rebel News and the other independents at the debate. Here he is starting to lose it after he turned around to interject himself into a conversation Cian Bexty with the Countersignal was having.
And things get homoerotic / because for plausible deniability. Also, the dudes are being kind of homophobic. That's one.
Do you have friends that
You've
get pretty homophobic at times?
Yeah, most of my gay friends.
Most of your gay friends.
Do you know how much? Do you know how fast? What was it? What was the F thing he used?
You say it.
He said, yeah.
Was it fagotization?
Yeah, yeah.
That's run through my gay friends like wildfire. They
Fagotization.
love that. They love it.
They love fagotization.
They think it's the funniest word they've heard in a while.
So Ryan Turnbull.
Doing this voice doesn't actually
So
work.
Ryan No, I'm not. I'm curious. What, do you just think that politicians should be off the hook for saying stuff like this?
What, 15 years ago? How long ago?
He was 30.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry,
So
who are you?
He wasn't a politician, so this is when he was...
He was a 30-year-old man
Okay.
who called gay men perverse.
Yeah, I think I've read through your story,
Yeah.
and I know you don't even believe that that's what he said.
Oh, I
Because know you're
100%,
smarter
because
than
I
that,
read
but
it.
you're just,
I read it that that's what he
I
said.
read it too. And you're...
Okay,
I just
so-
don't
so
think you're a
you-
very... I mean, you don't have any sort of morals or scruples, so
Okay.
you'll just throw it wherever you want. But I read it, and I know you're actually smarter than you pretend to be, so I know you know what he was
So
saying.
he typed the words on Facebook,
Mhm.
perverse fagotization, referring to
so
gay
that's the
men.
only
No,
thing he wrote.
just calm down for a second, guys.
No, I know, but I want you to be honest.
So he said perverse fagotization, referring to homosexual men, and you think that that's an acceptable type of language for
Is that all
politicians
he
to use?
Oh, well, he wasn't a
No,
politician.
that wasn't the only thing that he said.
yeah,
he
I
said
know.
a
I read
lot.
through what he said.
He said a lot of
Yeah, I read
extremely
through what he said.
homophobic stuff. And just because he's a liberal, you're trying to defend him. If this was a conservative,
Oh, so if it was a conservative, you would call for him to be removed, like Aaron
oh,
Gunn.
absolutely. But
or
Aaron
Andrew
Gunn
Martin?
hasn't said something like that.
Okay.
And if you could point to them doing that, please let me know.
The voice doesn't
It's
work.
crazy that you're getting so emotional about this, though. And how many of your
Honestly,
friends?
I
How
have
many of your
respect
friends
for
drop
this sort
F
of,
slurs just frequently?
I have respect for the industry and the profession.
Sure, you do. Yeah.
Your little chattering class.
Sure.
You
Sorry.
third-party advertisers that you
Who
work
are you?
for.
Who are you? Who do you work for?
Rebel News.
Who do you work for?
Rebel News, owned by Ezra Levant, is a different company.
Why are you screaming?
So they can stop spreading misinformation.
So.
Also,
Right now.
Why are you screaming, by the way?
Well, I want to make sure the guys filming it over there get the good audio.
Good.
Can you hear me okay? Am I enunciating properly? Do you have one set up? You got the levels ready for me? Because you're clearly not doing any actual journalism while you're here.
You're supposed to maintain respectful discourse. It's right here in black and white.
Why?
Could you
When
do that?
you guys started gaming the rules and threatening to sue because you didn't get your way, I assumed the rules were out the window.
No, it's right here in black and white. We follow the rules.
Oh,
It's the federal
was that like
court.
when it was in black and white saying you should only have one reporter credited so that everyone might have a chance to ask a question?
You're
but
getting
instead,
the facts wrong.
you wanted to
Nobody
take,
reached out.
what was it, 2-minute long questions?
This report is brought to you by. What if governments are trying to reinvent the wheel when the greatest teacher of all times has already laid out the perfect blueprint for a constitution for a kingdom of love, faith, and freedom? Introducing the Kingdom of Heaven Freedom Passport. This special edition Freedom Passport captures the foundational truths of love, ethics, and freedom for all. It's a powerful reminder of Jesus' call to love one another and to be part of something bigger that you can carry with you every day. Join the movement, share the truth, and spread the love with your family and friends. Get your Kingdom of Heaven Freedom Passport at freedompassport.ca. And right now, all orders in North America come with free shipping and a free downloadable song with every purchase. As you heard it, that was Kian telling him to chill out. And that was my voice doing the same, reminding him, Stuart Benson, of the rules on the table, telling us that we needed to be respectful, like journalists. I mean, imagine for 1 second that Kian or myself had been yelling out about how it's okay to use the gay slur that starts with the letter F. Every journalist there would be filming us and would have been racing to break that story, yet they did nothing. Some of them, of course, bounced up when Benson started screaming misinformation about Rebel towards Ezra, and Ezra started calmly responding back.
You guys are so verbose, I'll say. Most of us didn't get a question. And what I really don't enjoy is that everyone else here was being respectful, following the rules, just being considerate to everyone else. And what you guys decided to do was to take advantage, threaten to sue, so that you could try to get more than everyone else, And now,
You're lying.
nobody
You're
likes
lying.
you.
The CBC
I'm
and Radio
lying.
Canada had 4 questions and we had 4 questions. Why are you lying? We had the same number as the
after you guys
CBC.
threatened to sue, so that you can, that's why they got the 4 questions, because the commission.
You're making that up. You're lying again.
When did the CBC get 4 questions?
Yesterday.
Yes, after they had
Oh,
already.
and they had
sold
the
it
same
to
in
you
2021,
because
same in
you threatened
2019.
to sue.
You're lying again.
I'm not.
It's in the correspondence that
Don't you have a third-party advertising truck to go take care of?
you're lying
How much
again.
how much have you spent on third-party advertising this election? Between Rebel News and For Canada, companies you own both of, how much money have you spent to influence this election? I'm assuming in favor of the Conservatives. How much have you spent? You're a journalist.
Rebel
you must
News
be
has
honest.
spent 0.
So, Rebel News Limited, you set up.
You're a liar. This is, you
registered
haven't
under
done your
Elections
homework.
Canada.
You're making
Everyone
things
else,
up.
You can go to Elections Canada right now. Every third party is registered. Search Rebel News for Canada, and you will see clear as day Ezra Levant as the owner of both of those companies. He has third-party advertising trucks driving around this
You're
venue
lying
right
again.
now.
That's not a Rebel News ad on there. You're lying.
It's
Why are you
owned by
lying?
Rebel. It's owned by you. Sorry. The truck is For Canada, which is owned
No,
by
you're
you,
lying again.
which is
Jesus
separate
Christ.
from
Who
Rebel
are you?
News,
You're a
which is also
crazy guy.
owned by you.
You're crazy. You
You
got to control your emotions.
One by one.
Control your emotions.
So, I'm just enunciating.
You're out of control. You're out of
Speaking
control.
quietly doesn't make your things any less
You're
bullshit.
completely out of control emotionally. And your facts are completely wrong.
All right,
You're an
let's go.
embarrassment. What's your name? What's your name? You're suddenly shy.
No, I'm Googling.
You're Googling your name? Why don't you tell us who you are, tough guy?
Stuart Benson, Hill Times.
Student Benson, well, you're a disgrace to the Hill Times. And your facts are wrong.
Now, clearly, that was not a rebel caused incident. We were trying to be the diffusers of the situation, unlike the state choice media journalists who we were surrounded by, or Cochrane or Barton, who were drumming up falsehoods, which was probably what riled up Benson in the first place. Actually, I find this very strange, but while that was all happening, the commission walked in after Benson had gone on a total tantrum for far too long, and he decided at that very moment to pull Ezra out to talk about something completely unrelated. It was actually how the CBC journalists, I assume Cochrane and Barton, didn't want us there for no reason. We did nothing wrong. That's why we weren't kicked out. And as Ezra got up to walk out to go talk with them, it gave appearance to everybody in the room that he was being reprimanded for what would have been nothing because we had done nothing wrong. So the journalists started tripping over themselves and they ran to the door to try to catch Ezra or a glimpse through the door, or maybe he was going to come back. They didn't know. They wanted to know what happened. In fact, they weren't even paying attention to the debate on the screen. But at least they were waiting to see what happened. Instead, the CBC, state propagandists, whatever name you have for them at this point, they just ran with wild tales immediately. And they told the public this.
There was some sort of an altercation inside there in the last little while involving Ezra Levant, who is the head of Rebel News, and other journalists. Michel Cormier has escorted Ezra Levant out. His credentials, we believe, has been revoked.
That was just totally false. Like I said, we did nothing wrong, so we were not punished in any way. And if we had done something wrong, don't you think one of the, 100 or 200 journalists and camera people present would have captured it? Don't you think our David Menzies would have been arrested? Don't you think we would have been kicked out instead of being the last ones to leave alongside the CBC journalists? And look at what Miss Rosie Barton had to say. You saw the incident. You saw Stu Benson. Here's what she told the people.
There were not altercations between journalists inside the media room, and there was no altercation between journalists that happened on David's set. These were right-wing people that publish their own agenda and websites who confronted journalists inside the media center. The situation deteriorated quickly in terms of how those people were behaving inside a professional media center where you were supposed to be doing your job. And that has left us with no scrums and a a strange security situation on a night where we should be focused on the things that
Absolutely.
you want to ask us about.
Does that look like a lie to you to protect gay slur fan Stu Benson while vilifying Rebel News already further than they had? That's what it looks like to me. Now, you guys got to remember, this broadcast was for the debate. There were millions of people watching these claims that these CBC journalists made about me and my colleagues falsely. My friends, my family, my neighbors. And in fact, the CBC, by their own admission, say that this was unprecedented in the amount of people who watched the debate. They said 2.6 million. And the French debate, by the way, which is where Barton defamed me, they said they had twice as much viewership than they had before. Let that sink in. They spread all this misinformation. They dehumanized us. They called us not journalists, even though it was them who were not doing the basic things you would do in journalism by being in the same room with the people you are vilifying and spreading lies about. You could have come and clarified things with us first, or allowed us to clarify when we approached you to tell you you were wrong. I think the misinformation that the CBC was continuously spreading about us the entire time we were there emboldened journalists and cameramen to yell at us, curse at us, and in the case of my colleagues Lincoln J. and David Menzies, assault us too. All because they don't like our questions. I mean, look at what this CTV mouthpiece, Scott Reed, felt so comfortable saying after he clearly had been misled about what took place during the debate.
These guys, these right-wing incel wipes, them over and over and over again. This is a election campaign, and they seized the weakness of Michelle Cormier and the commission to turn last night into a clown show. Right. First of all, they start goading people. Cormier and the commission, of course, allow Ezra, an arsonist, into the room, and then they give him a nice bunch of kindling and a match. And, they get into an argument with them. That allows them to tape everything. And then we, Corey, myself, Kathleen, we're all kicked out of. They just said their reaction is, all right, well, we're going to lock down the media filing room, which is where we were supposed to watch it. So they're like, okay, we're going to kick everybody out. That way it will maintain some integrity in this room. So they kick us out, but they leave the fucking rebel in. These guys disrupted a democratic exercise. They delighted in it. They filmed it. They raised money off of it. And Michelle Cormier and the commission invited it all, melted down when it occurred, and had no plan, no ability, and no wit to try to manage it. It was just a complete show from start to finish.
That's not okay. The CBC has dehumanized Rebel News journalists, endangered us with their dangerously false and negligent reporting that was fueled by hate instead of facts. If you value my journalism and are as sick to your stomach as I am that our tax dollars have been taken from us to pay for the salaries of trash reporters like Miss Barton, who lack journalistic integrity when reporting on subjects that challenge the state's agenda, then take a minute of your time to sign our petition and to fire off our pre-written email complaint, or respectfully revise it to your own words to the CBC's ombudsman, demanding that Rosie publicly apologize and retract her lies, and do so in video form, just like the CBC's own correction principles say they do when it's a serious situation like this. Again, that's cbclies.com. Drea Humphrey for Rebel News. The CBC is desperate. Depending on who loses this election, they could lose their funding. And so they're pulling out all the stops to silence and defame Rebel News. If you appreciate that we bring you the other side of the story, even when bullies like CBC don't want us to, please go to cbclies.com. Sign our petition and join the email campaign.